In today's video, you're going to learn exactly how much it cost me to build my home crypto mining shed.
Today's video is sponsored by the team over at coastalcryptomining.com. Coastal Crypto Mining is unlike any other crypto hardware vendor in the industry. Why, you may ask? Well, their team doesn't just view you as a customer, but as a fellow passionate enthusiast. Coastal Crypto Mining's experience starts with helping you with your initial research and questions, then on to the purchase and shipping stage. Once delivered, help with your setup and configuration, and finally, any after-sales support you may need. Their team of experts strives to make your experience one of a kind, where customer service is a priority. Head on over to coastalcryptomining.com and tell them the Hobbyist Miner sent you.
What is going on, miners, and welcome back to the Hobbyist Miner channel. Well, in today's video, we're going to go through everything I have purchased and every cost that I have incurred to build my home crypto mining shed. Now, before we go ahead and dive in, I know that not everybody can afford this, and I know that I went above and beyond and almost too far on some items. So this might not be for everybody. It might not be feasible to spend this type of money for everybody, and you don't need to go as extreme as I did on some of the items. Keep that in mind as we go through everything. Also, if you don't want to sit by and go through how much it costs to build the foundation and all the details, or how much was involved with the flooring and the details, no sweat. I'm going to put a timestamp directly down below. You guys can jump ahead and find out the final number with completely bypassing all of the nitty-gritty and details. But keep in mind, some people really want to know how much was this, how much was that, how much was put into this, how much was that. So I went above and beyond and put together a spreadsheet with as much detail as possible. I went through invoices and receipts. I put together links and I broke it down by each part and function, like the structure or the roof or whatever. And I broke it all down into detail. So if anybody wants to do this themselves, they at least have a resource available to them. All right, guys, let's dive in. Alrighty, guys. So we went ahead and built a spreadsheet, and I'm going to put a link directly down below in this video for you guys to check it out and digest on your own, because there is a boatload of information. Now, you might not be building a crypto mining shed. Maybe you're building a crypto mining, room in your basement, or you're adding to a garage or something like that. So hopefully some of this detail can help you guys out as you proceed forward. Also, if you're looking to buy and build a crypto mining shed and you just need a sounding board, hit me up in my Discord. I'll put a link directly down below. I make myself fully available, and there's an entire channel in our Discord dedicated to mining sheds. And it's not just me in there. There's several other individuals in there who have built a mining shed that can answer questions for you. Check it out directly down below. Now, we're going to go through this sheet. Some of the areas will be a lot faster than others, because you guys can check it out and read all of the details, and we'll summarize other areas as well. In addition, I'll have some clips thrown up on some of the things that we're talking about to make it easier to visualize and understand exactly what we're talking about. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're gonna jump in here, and the way that I've laid out the spreadsheet is kind of start to finish chronologically regarding like what's first, which is like the foundation. And then we get all the way down to kind of the last items after the shed's been built and everything's been done, because I kind of laid it out in my mind and built this spreadsheet based off of that timeline. So starting at the top, and we'll zoom in here to make things easier for you guys to see, is the shed foundation. This is the actual ground and the work that we had to do around the shed. Now, I want to make it clear, I did not include labor in anything here, because a lot of it was done by myself or friends of mine. So it wouldn't make sense for me to include labor because it's not totally accurate. So this list is going to be completely made up of parts and supplies along the way. So the foundation is the area where the shed actually sits in the ground itself. And we actually dug that down pretty significantly to level it out and also put the shed into the ground itself versus completely above it. So it kind of shared that a little bit above and a little bit below. So we actually did a perimeter around the outside of the shed using 4x4 pre-treated wood. I did look at 4x6, which is larger, but it was more expensive and it wasn't entirely needed. So I did do a lot of research on the sheds and the foundation layout. So we had a 4x4 and we had 8-foot and 10-foot pieces of lumber around the outside there. I have listed the deckmate screws that we used in order to attach all of this kind of giant square rectangle together. And the whole point of this was just to keep the stone in. That was the point of the foundation. Now, after we had the wood in place, we needed to secure that wood, that lumber, to the ground, and we used 1/2-inch rebar that was 2 foot. I probably could go a little bit farther, but everything I read said 2 foot would be fine. In addition to that, we needed a drill bit. So we did buy a carbine drill bit, a 1/2-inch one, to go through the pieces of the 4x4 pre-treated wood down into the ground. And we did pick that up as well, listed there. Finally, the weed barrier. So after we've kind of put around this giant, this perimeter or this square, we actually went and got heavy duty weed barrier and stapled it inside of that giant square around the outside of it and layered it pretty thick to avoid any weeds or grass from coming up from underneath that may have been available. We did clear the lot and clear that area, but we still kept that in mind. Now, moving on from there, we ended up using well more than what I ever would have expected. So I bought bags of all-purpose stone. Looking back, I probably should have just had a truckload delivered, but I ended up buying bags and then going back and getting more bags and going back and getting more bags. But I ended up total with 74 bags of this all-purpose stone. Now, these bags, I made sure, like, these were a certain type of stone. You don't just want to use any stone. And they were about $4 a bag, so they got pretty pricey in the end. Finally, looking there, after we've had the stone laid out and we're all good to go and we have our foundation all set, we went and purchased 2 different things to anchor the shed to the actual ground. The first thing was this spiral, looks like a corkscrew anchor that you actually have a drill bit that you hook to it, and it drills down into the ground. So through my stone that I put in and into the actual ground below it. And then I had a 2.5-foot double looped steel cable that went through that corkscrew. The end of it actually had a hook eye through the corkscrew, through the, what we're going to call it the base of the shed, and then came back into the actual corkscrew itself to anchor it to the ground. And we did 4 of those, 1 on each corner of the entire shed. So I did include here links to everything for the foundation, as well as notes and kind of where it was used and how it was used to better explain everything. So take a look at the spreadsheet if you guys want more details. But to do the foundation of all of this with the stone and the foundation, the barrier and everything, that ended up being $683.66. Now, this doesn't include tax and everything like that, because I know it's going to be different for everybody. But a total of about $683, even up to that point. So now let's go ahead and jump to the base of the shed. This is what the shed sits on. And I could have done this a few different ways. Some people ended up putting like cinder blocks within all the gravel and then putting it on there. Looking back, I probably should have done that. That's one thing that I probably should have done. Instead, what I did was there was another school of thought, which was building decking in the middle of everything. And that's what I did. So I built decking and put the decking on top of these concrete blocks that were in with the gravel. And then the shed sat on top of the decking is how I ended up doing it. And I was able to screw everything down into each other and anchor it down. So there's pros and cons to each of them. So to do the base of this, this was all before the shed was even delivered. To build a deck in the middle of it, I used quite a bit of 4x6s, 12-foot pre-treated, as well as 2x4s, 8-foot, and some additional. I bought more 4x4s that were 8-foot to put under the middle of the entire shed, because the shed has a support towards the back and towards the front, but nothing in the center of that shed. And I wanted to put support under there because of all the weight that I was going to have in there with the mining rigs. In addition to that, I bought mending steel plates that would then, off of the shed, it would actually attach to my decking. So just re-securing everything together is what I did. And then finally, after the shed was in place, I put lattice around the bottom of it, real tight knit against the shed, not leaving any openings to keep any rodents or any cats or anything like that from making a little home underneath of there. And that worked out really, really well. But Now we're to the base of the shed. So base and foundation are done, and we're about $294.29. All right, so now let's move on to delivery of the shed and the shed itself, the actual structure. Now, my price was actually included, like delivery was included, which was a huge savings for me. And my pricing was really good, $1,600 for the shed inside and out. And I was quoted originally $5,400 for some of the sheds that I was looking at. But I really had to look around. I actually found, I'm in central Pennsylvania, so I was able to find a local Amish shed builder. And that saved me a lot of money versus going with something like from Lowe's or Home Depot that is more mass produced. Now, with that, I was able to customize it a lot, and you'll see the notes in the spreadsheet. So not only was delivery included, we did wood versus any vinyl. We had the inside heat wrapped as well. And then we were able to pick like the colors of the outside and the trim colors, as well as my shingle colors. I removed a lot to save money. Any windows, any premium doors or anything like that, and just went with a plain Jane stock exterior rated door that did have a weatherproof sealant core, and then nothing too crazy. I didn't do any like easements in there or anything like that. I just want it to be a basic shed as much as possible. No vents or anything like that, which most sheds have. So in total, the shed delivered on top of my base, they put it on there for me, was $1,600. All right, so the amount of money I spent on electrical was probably, and actually is, just under what my shed cost me, and that's not including labor. Thankfully, I have a good relationship with a local electrician and was able to get everything done entirely free. I put a lot of time and effort into it and ran a lot of the cabling ahead of time, and then had him do a lot of terminations. But my cost for the electrical, all said and done, was just shy of the cost of the shed, and it didn't include labor. So to give you guys some ideas, I ended up doing 3 30 amp 240 volt double pole breakers, and then 1 single of a 20 amp 220 volt double pole breaker. That ended up working out really, really well. I actually ran them directly through my garage, because that's where my panel was. So I ran 10-2 and 12-2 from inside of the garage, which was right very close. Like the shed was only a few feet from outside the garage. So I was able to cut some drywall, run everything through a few studs, exit the house. And then if you guys can see with these images and videos, I went through a 90-degree conduit box, I guess is what they call it. Let's see here. It is the 90-degree. Let's see if I can find it here. 90-degree conduit body is what they call it. Comes off the house, it goes straight down, and then into a flexible conduit tube. I got 25 feet of that. That was really expensive. And then went into, it went on top of the gravel, everything exposed, inside the conduit, and then into other 90 degrees that entered the shed. Once in there, we put a junction box that was kind of my like main hub that everything would funnel into within the shed. But that ended up working out really, really well. But it's all this little cost that's involved in all these things. I mean, the Romex cable was a super big expense here. The flex conduit that I used. Now, some people went with doing an underground conduit, which I could have went with, but because of my foundation and the stone being up against my house, if I ran anything underground, it would have been a mess. So I was like, I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to do everything above ground. And I'm actually really glad I did that. But between the house and the actual shed, it was like 5 feet total. And most of that was on the house side and then on the shed side as well. So there was maybe only 2.5 feet that was actually touching the ground at all with the flex conduit. And I did it all myself. Now moving on from there, the electrical came into the shed, into that junction box, and then went up into my meter boxes. And I had 3 meter boxes that are listed here with Drox meters. And I have 3 of the L630R locking plugs that are in there as well, ready to accept the PDU, which is as the flip side, which is the L630P end for my PDUs. In addition to that, we ran the 20 amp in there, and there's actually 120 amp 120, not 220. 20 amp 120 with the yellow cable, which is your 12.2. And we ran a bunch of outlets to power fans that I have in there, the exhaust fans. We'll talk about that later, as well as outlets. I didn't realize how many outlets I would need. I actually had outlets that we put in. I had help with the electrician with outlet boxes and everything like that, traditional outlets. But down these outlets were meant for 20 amp. And then I actually had him come back months later and add more outlets. That was one thing that I wish I would have thought about, was like, wow, outlets for just different things. You know, the exhaust fans, those plug in to a traditional receptacle, or my inline fans from my S19J Pro setup. That's what that uses. Or little things here and there I needed to plug in. It was like, wow, I didn't realize how many outlets I would actually need outside of, like, at first I just thought I would just need the 30 amp 240 volt setup. So that worked out nicely, but those are all additional expenses. All the blue one gang boxes and the outlets and the plates, all of that's listed here, guys. In addition to that, I put lights in. I got these cheap shop lights, these 4000K 3-foot shop lights. They're like $14 each. And I put them on top inside the shed. And then we cut off the ends of those and wired those into the electrical with a light switch. So like all of that is included, as well as the PDUs that I used. The PDUs that I used were the trip light ones. Those are for 30 amp 220 or 240 volt. And those are awesome. L630RP plugs with 15-foot cables. And then I put in there on the list, you can see on the spreadsheet, 4 C19s. And it worked out awesome. 4 C19s and then 16 C13s, which was perfect for all my mining rigs and everything like that. So in the end, my electrical, without even labor, was $1,478.53. All right, so let's talk about flooring. So it was just wood floor of the shed, and that's fine. It worked out okay. The floor wasn't treated in any way. It was untreated wood. And so what I decided to do was I went ahead and I did my research looking into different epoxy solutions for garages that people had used, like the do-it-yourself ones that people had used for sheds. And that actually worked out really well. Rust-Oleum has like a proxy shield is what they call it, which is a garage floor coating kit. It's the whole thing that you need. And it was a gray color. So that was definitely interesting. I learned a lot of, like, you know, cleaned everything, and I didn't need to do any fill or anything like that because it was brand new wood. So I went ahead and epoxied it. I actually epoxied it 3 times because the kit was meant for a single car garage, which was significantly bigger than my 8-foot by 7-foot shed. So we epoxied it. We did the flakes. It comes with the blue, black, and white flakes. And then after I did that, I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. Well, that kit doesn't come with the clear coat. So I went and bought the clear coat, which is expensive, like $60 for a gallon. But I didn't use all of it at all. Like, there's no chance. And put the clear coat on. I actually did a few coats of the clear coat. And that's really what protects that epoxy. And that worked out awesome. And I'm so glad I did that well before I ended up doing anything else in the shed. It would have been a nightmare to do that later. So in total, the flooring cost $177.63 without labor. All right, so now let's get into the intake side of the shed. So my entire design was airflow. With crypto mining sheds, the whole goal is recycling your air as fast as possible. I've seen some people do mining sheds with like air conditioners and stuff. It's totally not necessary. I'll fight somebody over it word for word. It is not necessary. Mining is all about airflow. Even if it's 110 outside, if your airflow is recycling fast enough, your GPUs and your ASICs are happy. So airflow recycling needs to be critical with how much intake you can get and how much exhaust you can get. And you don't need to have active intake. And I don't have active intake. And I've been through all the seasons now with my crypto mining shed. So on the intake side, and kudos to ChumpChangeXD, he recommended these, he's used these. We use the rectangle functional gable vents. These are the vents you guys have seen in lots of my videos where I have right now 9 of them, and I'm actually going to be adding 6 more of these come spring because I want more airflow in my shed. And I have 9 of these right now, and they install awesome. You cut the holes for them, you install the backing into the hole, and then you can actually put a screw through to secure it, the backing into the shed, which is great. And then I siliconed around the entire outside of it to keep a good seal between the gable vent and the shed. And then the vent just pops right on the front, and you can take off that And in here, you guys can see I have the MERV6 blue and white. It comes in a 25 feet roll, and you just cut it to size and put it in place. And I replace those every few months. But one roll will probably last me 2 to 3 times of replacing those. So your cost of $27, I'd say in about a year, maybe you spend $50, $60 total on the filters. And it's nice. It's just, you know, they're in place. They're good to go. You can pop off. I mean, you could pop off one of those gable vents, replace the filter in minutes. But after this winter, I will be taking out and like scrubbing all the vents and stuff, because they gain a lot of dirt and bugs and things like that. And included in that, I did put in the silicone that I used and the amount that I used. Oh my gosh, used so much silicone to make sure everything was good. But in total, the intake side of the shed was $631.81. And a majority of that cost, you can see 500 of that cost was in those gable vents alone. Do you have to go with those gable vents? No. But I've seen lots of people try to do intake vents without filters, and they entirely regret it later. I had to do very minimal blowing out of my rigs. I didn't have a ton of pollen or dust or dirt or anything after an entire season because I used those filters. All right, taking a look at exhaust, another critical factor here. So when I was doing exhaust, I went overboard, especially for the size of my shed. So to give you some idea, my shed, as I said, is 8x7. It's this weird wonky size. It was the size I'd given them for the builders. It all worked out well. But I put in my specs 4 AC Infinity T16 shutter fans. I run one of these. I run one of these almost year round, and a second one every once in a while in the summer. And I don't even run them at full speed. They have 10 speeds, and at speed of 10, they're 2,560 CFM. Guys, I run these at speed like 3 in the winter with, what am I at? 17,000 watts in that shed running right now. And then in the summer, I actually do 2 of them at a speed of like 5. Like, I have 4 of them. They never get used. I put way too much. I probably, if looking back, 2 of these would have been completely okay. But I never wanted to have to be concerned about not having enough airflow. And look at me now. I'm looking to add intake vents, because literally these shutter fans are so strong that I need, when I open the door, the shutter fans actually open up more. So I'm actually causing like throttling to occur with the exhaust vents, because I don't actually have enough intake vents. So I need to add some of those. I did go with black silicone here to match the T16s. Turned out really nice. But you guys can see here, in total, that cost me $1,135.92. And a majority of that is in the exhaust, those actually shutter fans. All right, so in this point in the video, the shed's in place, the electrical's done, the intake's in place, the exhaust is done, the flooring's done. Now let's talk about racking. So because of the height of my setup, and my shed's a lean-to shed, which is actually by design, if you guys didn't notice that, the intake side is on the lower side of the lean-to shed, pulling the air in, and then it slowly slopes upward, where the exhaust fans are at the highest point to receive that heat. But with all that said, I needed to find a rack that would fit in there, because it was a lean-to ceiling, so the entire ceiling is sloping. And I wanted the ability to walk around 3 sides of the rack. I didn't want it to be a mess. I wanted my racking directly in the middle, so that there would be an intake side and an exhaust side, and it would be wide open. I've seen people put racks around the outsides of their sheds, and it's not maximized for airflow in any way, shape, or form. You need to design your shed with airflow in mind. My shed was designed based off of an air tunnel. Air comes in one side, through your rigs, and out the other, with nothing impeding that. And so I found a rack by Gladiator that I picked up at Home Depot. Amazon has it as well. I probably should have went with Amazon because it took Home Depot a while. But that rack was awesome. Heavy duty rack, can handle the weight that I needed to. It fit the height, and the length was a little bit different though. You can see it's 60 inches wide, 72 inches high, and it's 18-inch depth. They sell them in 24-inch depths, but I wanted to keep that depth smaller because I wanted to be able to walk on the intake side and walk and work on the exhaust side, and then you have the door side as well. So that was really critical there. So that rack ended up costing $349.98. Okay, so the next spot was sound deadening. And was it entirely necessary? No. but I went with it anyway because my shed is very close to my neighbor's house, within 20 feet. And anything I could do to lower the amount of noise that this makes. I'm actually in the process of replacing some of my ASIC power supplies with more expensive power supplies, but they're more efficient and they're quieter. So I'm looking at moving to a lot of APW7s in order to do that, just to keep it quiet, because I really don't want to have a problem with the township and my neighbor. Excuse me. So far, so good. But we did buy acoustic tiles. Do you need to do this? No. Some of you guys are in the boonies and you don't even have to worry about this. So I did acoustic panel tiles on all open areas in the shed, on the intake and the exhaust side. I did have a recommendation from Hawk Crypto, so thank you, Hawk, on doing acoustic wedges in the corners. He did a bunch of technical explaining to me as to why there was value in that, so I picked those up as well. So sound deadening material, we ended up spending $137.96. Moving on to safety, and you don't have to do this, but I definitely felt it was a necessity, especially because my shed is close to my house. So I installed 2 of these fireballs. I think they're called suppressor extinguishers. It's a ball, those orange balls that you see in all my videos that sit in a cradle. One's on my intake side, one's on my exhaust side. One of these is completely enough to do the job. And what they do is pretty much they have compressed powder in there, which is a fire extinguisher suppressant powder, that when a flame hits any part of that ball, and the flame has to be 140 degrees or hotter, which of course it would cause the ball to pop. Now, as I've told people, I am more concerned about my home than the tech inside that shed, because many people have made that argument and talked about the fact of like, oh, you're going to ruin your crypto mining gear. If there's a fire in my shed, I'm not worried about my crypto mining gear. I'm more worried about my family and my house. So I have 2 of those in there at a height that if they explode, they'll cover the entire shed inside and out. In addition to that, we do have a smoke detector, which is Wi-Fi, and it does a push notification to my cell phone. And total for safety items, the only other thing I probably would like to do in the future is add a fire extinguisher inside the door, just in case. To have that in case there is a fire and the smoke alarm goes off, the balls don't go off, or the balls go off, but there's still a fire. So something I need to do. But in total, $99.97. All right, so let's talk about network. I didn't go crazy in here. A lot of the stuff that I've done VLAN wise is inside my home and is connected to this uplink. So I ran Ethernet from my basement where my router and firewall is, just a modem and firewall, through out of my basement, through my garage, from the garage into the conduit that we run the electrical wiring in, into the shed. And I ran 2 cables just in case one goes bad. You know, it's always a rule of thumb with networking. So there's 2 cables in there terminated. And I have them plugged into one of them into an access port in order to provide wireless internet to anything in the shed while I'm out there as well. And then also I have 2 just cheapo gigabit switches. These are TrendNet unmanaged switches. I don't need anything crazy. But I have 2 16-port switches out there. You'd be surprised how quickly you eat through Ethernet ports it just with all the mining gear. I mean, it's crazy. Every GPU rig and the mini ASICs and the mid-size ASICs, it gets crazy. So in total, we spent $178.47. All right, so on to security. So you guys don't have to do this, but I did this. I have my shed tied into my home security system. So there's an entry sensor on the door. In addition to that, there is a siren built in to the shed as well. And I have 2 sirens on the outside of my house as well that will go off, and they're insanely loud. So it's all tied into my home security system. So my system is armed and I'm home, and someone was to open the door, it would blast my neighbors, as well as imagine inside this little tiny 8x7 shed getting blasted with that sound. So it's a deterrent. It also lets my neighbors know. And then of course it's tied into my security system, so it reports to police as well, which is helpful there. So that ends up being $74.98 on security. All right, so to wrap this up, after we've gone through all the parts and all the equipment and stuff like that, my total cost for my home crypto mining shed without any miners in it is $6,843.20. Now, I do want to add a line here that I probably would do a miscellaneous line of $1,000 of just miscellaneous odd and end items. I had to run to the hardware store to get this or that, or this cable or this cable. So I would add another $1,000 onto this to say right about $7,800 total for all, let's say, hardware and supplies. Now on the bottom left, I put a list of items that I wanted to share with you that were labor intensive that are not part of this cost at all. One, building out the foundation. Did that myself, did that with family. Building the base of the shed. Did that myself and with family. All the electrical work getting into the shed and inside of the shed, which is really expensive for electricians. Their cost is very expensive. I'm very fortunate. The work, not only electrical work to get into the shed, but then also all the work inside the shed. The flooring to be epoxied. The intakes to all be cut and installed. I had help doing those. The exhaust to be cut and installed. I had help doing those. The storage shelf, building that storage shelf in the beginning, there's labor with that as well, even though it was me. The meter boxes to get built with the electrician and installed. The Ethernet to get run, I did that from the basement into the garage and in the shed. And then finally, just stupid stuff like installing those acoustic foam tiles. All of that is labor intensive. So I wanted to bring that up because it's like, okay, everything that we covered has labor involved. So we're at what, $7,800 we said, and then take these numbers, which I don't even have budgets or estimates on. That's expensive. If I was to ballpark with labor, ballparking guys, because I had so much help and did a lot of this myself, and it was a learning experience. If you're a DIY guy or you're professional or you want to learn as you go, like you can't put a dollar value on the labor. But to throw a ballpark number out there, I would say all said and done with all of that, you're probably somewhere around $15,000 total. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my electrical work, my electrician's going to comment on the video and go, that would have been $5,000 versus like what I'm thinking. But I don't have those numbers. And I'm fortunate because I did a lot of it myself. I learned along the way. Everything took 10 times longer. Lots of mistakes were made. Lots of cut up hands doing that. Lots of bad back days. Lots of problems. Lots of words expressed. But yeah, all said and done, I'd say if I was to put a ballpark estimate on it with the labor, we'd be somewhere around $15,000. So is a crypto mining shed for you? I don't know. Maybe. The one recommendation I can make, and I'm going to have another video to talk about this in general, is building a crypto mining shed was one of the best decisions I made as a home crypto miner. And I'm going to talk about that more in a future video because I don't think I have enough time in this video to really express and discuss that. So we'll get into that in a future video. In addition to that, I'm going to have another video talking about 5 major mistakes I made building a home crypto mining shed. So this series is not over here. I hope to add to it and expand onto it. If you're thinking about doing a home crypto mining shed, hopefully some of this video today helped you out. Leave a comment down below if you have questions, concerns, discussion points. I love to talk to you about it. But if you want to talk in person, jump over to the Discord. The Discord, we have a mining shed channel and ask away. I'd love to chat with you guys about it. Well, guys, that's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this long-winded video. Hopefully at least one of you guys took something away from it. And I'd love to hear your crypto mining shed experience. If you've gone down this avenue, leave a comment down below. Well, if you enjoyed the video, give it one of these, and I'll see you guys next time. Today's video is sponsored by Crypto.com. As a home crypto miner, it is crucial to have your cryptocurrency at your fingertips, and the Crypto.com app can help. Being able to send and receive cryptocurrency quickly, easily, and on the go is a must-have in 2023. The Crypto.com app allows you to utilize your cell phone as a gateway into the crypto world, no matter where you are. No matter if you're looking to buy, sell, send, or receive crypto on the go, the Crypto.com app has you covered. If you're looking to liquidate your mined crypto often, you can set your GPU mining rigs and ASIC miners to mine directly to your Crypto.com wallet, making it simple and easy to cash out quickly. Download the Crypto.com app today and give it a try. No harm in testing it out, poking around, and seeing if the Crypto.com app fits your hobbyist miner needs. Guess what? Use the link in today's video description to support the hobbyist miner entirely free.